Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect webinar. It is the last Connect webinar for 2020. I'm sure we can probably all agree that it's time to call 2020 an Uber and move on to 2021. Hopefully it's going to be much better and brighter, but until then, I'm thrilled though that we have Igel back with us for this last webinar of the year. We're going to be talking about ways to keep your remote workforce collaborating securely and productively. I know that a lot of us are still working from home, so all of this is still a big topic right now. And while we're on that kind of subject, my slide sharing isn't working for me, so I have my moderator holding the slides for me. So Mike, if you'll go to the next slide. All right, so just a reminder that you can always access any of our CUGC webinar recordings. We have a full library ready for you to watch, and if you have any downtime over the holidays, definitely check them out. They go back to 2015. There's tons of them. You just have to log in with your CUGC account and click on the Files tab, select Webinar Recordings, and you'll be off and running. All right, next. So just to keep you up to date, we've got this one being recorded just like the other ones, and we'll send out a link to that recording. It'll come from GoToWebinar tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Also, please submit your questions at any time. We're probably going to save most of them for the end of the presentation, but we might ask some of them here and there depending on what they are. But just type them in as you have them, and we'll keep an eye on them throughout. And finally, at the end, I'm going to send a link in the chat to a short survey. We just like to get your feedback. It's anonymous, it's super quick, and it's for CUGC use only. All right, so my slide person and our question moderator is Mike Nelson. Mike Nelson has a lot of great titles, but for CUGC, he's on our content working group. He is a part of our Women in Tech mentoring program, and he is a Citrix technology advocate. But he also, he has a lot of other accolades attached to his name. Mike, would you like to say hello?
Greetings, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Mike's going to take a look at all your questions, so be sure to type them in the question box as we go along. And last but not least, we have from IGEL, Dan O'Farrell. Dan has been with us before, so welcome back to the CUGC webinar stage, Dan. He is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at IGEL. And I'm going to turn things directly over to you, Dan.
Great, thanks. So thanks, Stephanie, thanks, Mike, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us in this last webinar of the year. We've got 2 weeks left. If you're in the Northeast, I hope you're not still digging out. If you got too much snow, there's a couple areas, friends of mine had about 2.5 feet fall in upstate New York. So hopefully you guys are safe and warm and doing okay today. Anyway, today what we're going to talk about, as is implied by the title, is how with Citrix and IGEL we can help collaborate, right? Especially across widely dispersed remote locations. That's really, the challenge that a lot of people are facing right now. And I think what a lot of us have realized, especially during this year of 2020, since February, March timeframe, you didn't know it before, probably understand it now that work is something that we do. It's not necessarily somewhere we go. If you're like me, I do miss at least working in the office sometime, right? I think we're all many of us are yearning for a little bit of, just communication with other people as opposed to working out of our homes and home offices, et cetera. But what's been really good is that many of us have stayed productive, maybe even more productive than ever, because we've gotten by with the tools we need to be able to get our job done no matter where we are. The benefits of that, right, are we as people get the freedom to work from any place. So I've got my little home office here set up my house outside of Phoenix, Arizona. But we can be focused and productive. My wife knows that when the door is shut, I'm working. When I open the door, it's, break time or end of day, etc. The guy in the bottom left there has a baby and he's juggling that with his keyboard. But we can all are probably doing a better job of balance, right? Balancing work from other things, So if you want to take an hour or two to go to your kid's soccer game or run an errand or whatever, the work day is now kind of spread across a lot more hours where you can intersperse work with personal things much more easily than when you were kind of going into an office every day. And another nice benefit from this on the far right is that the carbon footprint, the amount of pollution, the amount of energy being used has dropped dramatically globally, right? Due to the fact that there are fewer cars on the freeways, there are fewer large offices being lit up with electricity and lights and air conditioning, et cetera. So the overall carbon footprint has benefited from what's happened to all of us. Before this, the year 2020, a lot of companies had done some quote unquote disaster recovery planning, right? But the scope of that was typically like a really bad storm or a fire, some kind of a natural disaster that was geographically contained within an area, right? So if you had like redundant data centers, geographically dispersed from each other, that probably covered you. Or maybe you're using your own data center plus either for backup or for surges in information, surges in need, you might be using a public network service. What's happened, however, is the whole model for disaster recovery now is changing, where entire organizations have to make the assumption that globally they could lose connectivity, they could lose access to their offices, not just in one place, but around the world. That's what we've all learned from this. And to show how unprepared we were, this was taken in the springtime, the early spring. And it's a look at Europe, right? When you think of Western Europe, you think, well, pretty well advanced. They can probably react pretty quickly to technological challenges. But, the darker the color of these countries, the less accustomed people were or ready to work from home. If you don't know, IGEL, my company, my parent company, is headquartered in Germany. And when you look at Germany, surprisingly enough, Germany was ill-equipped, even though Germany is a very progressive company. In fact, we had to move our entire engineering team over the weekend away from their workstations at work in Augsburg, Germany, to their homes. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're able to do that. But this whole pandemic thing caught a number of countries off guard, not quite ready for it. So there's some chaos in the beginning. Now we've all kind of gotten into somewhat of a rhythm. And I'm not going to read this to you, but basically what Matt Mullenweg was saying of WordPress, he was saying that we could turn this into an opportunity, right? The fact that there was some chaos early on and some uncertainty, now that most companies have fallen into a pretty good rhythm in terms of how to continue getting work done with a widely dispersed workforce, we're realizing that, this may not be so bad. And in fact, the quote unquote return will definitely not look exactly like it worked before, because we've realized a lot of benefits from this model. And we can talk about how companies of different sizes view it as opportunistic at this point. Although many of us still look forward to the return, however that's going to look. So, one of the reasons this is working, what got us here, and I've been involved in VDI and desktop virtualization for, since around 2010. So for 10 years, it's been a full decade. And in, after year 2000, say 2005, 2008, VDI was kind of a concept that was, not quite ready for prime time. the performance was not necessarily so good. Some of the software was kind of buggy. User experiences would vary widely based on the software you're using and the codecs, media, et cetera. But what's happened, and certainly where we are today, is that the tools are there to make this work really, really well. Certainly, we've got technology from Citrix that enables this on the client side with the Workspace app. But we also have the infrastructure, right? We've got the technology to extend capabilities to the user home through VPN and through other technologies that I'll talk about a little bit later. We're using GoToMeeting right now, or Zoom or Teams or whatever you prefer, Cisco WebEx, whatever. So the unified communications tools are there to give us a really good, high quality experience. Cloud, we have cloud-based apps, we have cloud-based storage. So the cloud now is an absolutely viable alternative. And in fact, most enterprises, if they're not storing data in the cloud, they may be running workloads out of the cloud, combined potentially with their own data centers, and it gives them a level of reliability and redundancy. So the cloud is here. It's very, very active. And then we have the apps, right? We've got entire desktops being provided by the cloud desktop providers, and we've got very popular applications that companies are running their business on. Salesforce and Workday, all these things that are almost taken for granted. Office 365. When I log into my Outlook now, it's running out, being delivered to me from the cloud. So all the pieces that are needed are making this work really well, which enables us to have this meeting right now with, hopefully, you guys can hear me really clearly, and you can see these graphics. It's as if it's running from your local device. So that's all good, right? So we have the tools, we've got the capacity, we've got internet access, we've got Wi-Fi, et cetera. But there are some challenges and concerns for enterprises. And the biggest one is security, right? Now that people have moved out of the office, some may never come back, and some are off network, they're not on the corporate LAN. How do I ensure that policies, priorities, and permissions, and security in general, how do I protect those endpoint devices, which may be running different operating systems, maybe from different vendors? People are oftentimes using their home computers. How do I manage all that and make sure it's secure? The last mile issue with bandwidth is less of a problem than it used to be, but there are still some locations that are remote where maybe that's a little bit of a challenge. Now, I'm not going to go through all these bullets. You guys can see them for yourself. I will emphasize a little bit about updates and patching, right? Especially if you're running Windows machines in all those home or remote locations. The challenge of updating, and now most people are on Windows 10, but there's still a lot of Windows 7 systems out there. That gets exacerbated by this broad distribution of a distributed workforce. And then finally, again, I'm going to keep emphasizing security because that's always a concern, and more of a concern now with people just so distributed. And the model that I'm talking about, which I know you're all very familiar with, right, is VDI and DAS, right? And what's happened is the whole movement toward work from home. I know we've seen this at Citrix, we've seen it within IGEL, is it's actually popularized this model of mainly for two reasons. Number one is security, because this model is actually arguably much easier to secure than traditional fully contained Windows systems on every user's desktop, as well as flexibility to enable people to work from anywhere while still maintaining control and management of those endpoint devices. And we, IGEL supports whatever cloud you wish to use. The focus obviously today is Citrix. But this is how it works. And the whole idea, and Citrix is the pioneer in this, by the way, of enabling the experience to be the same whether you're at home, in the office, or anywhere else. That's been Citrix's mantra for close to 2 decades now. And that's also one thing that we want to ensure is that no matter where these people are located, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But for IT, it matters because they want to maintain control and security. Which brings us finally to Igel Os. So Igel's primary product, we are a software company headquartered in Bremen, Germany, but we have a very large group here, large organization in the US, of which I'm a part. The company's got over 400 people. A lot of development is in Germany, but a lot of sales and marketing operations is located here. Our US headquarters is in San Francisco, but of course everyone's now working from their home. But it's an operating system that's designed specifically for the delivery of what we call cloud workspaces. So that's VDI, it's desktop as a service, or any other mechanism by which you are going to allow your people to access their apps, desktops, and workspaces using a cloud model, where the heavy lifting and the execution is not happening on the endpoint. It's happening in the data center or in a public cloud and being delivered to the end user. So as a result, we submit that our operating system is extremely simple. It's very smart to help you figure out how to connect peripherals and optimize your media, etc. And it's exceptionally secure because this implies that you're moving Windows off the endpoint, moving Windows into the secure data center in the form of virtual desktops running on virtual machines. And at the endpoint, instead of running Windows, you're installing an extremely lightweight Linux-based operating system that has a lot of plus factors, if you will, when it comes to security. I'll talk about those in a second. Oh, and by the way, if anybody has any questions, I know Mike's monitoring that. So at any time, I'm happy to be interrupted if there's a question. So I mentioned the word simple. That's kind of core to what we do at Igel. Our goal is to make it really easy for end users to access their targeted apps and workspaces, and extremely easy for IT. Easy for IT to manage all those endpoints and to control what users can, or perhaps more importantly, cannot do from their device based on policies, department, role, etc. It turns out that with this very lightweight, small footprint, Linux-based operating system, the task of managing, maintaining, update, patching, securing endpoints becomes immensely easier. From a single console, we call it our Universal Management Suite, a single IT endpoint administrator can manage many tens of thousands, theoretically up to 300,000 devices from a single console. I say theoretically because we don't have any networks that size, so we have to do that testing through simulation. Easy for end users, right? They log on to their workspace app from the user interface, and boom, they're right into their typical work experience with all the Windows apps that they want to run, etc. It's just as if they were working on the corporate LAN with a Windows-based PC. Robust and versatile in that it scales, it can support any type of worker from any location. As a result, it helps people to be extremely productive, kind of do the better job of matching work to lifestyle. Gives them a high fidelity experience, kind of the theme of the title of this presentation, which is the delivery of things like GoToMeeting and other unified communications tools with great fidelity and a great user experience. And then flexible, right? We support over 100 integrated technologies with the operating system. So whether it's the latest version of the Citrix Workspace app, or the latest version of an Imprivata single sign-on, or the latest media codecs, or thin print, or printer stuff, or scanners and card readers, whatever you have, Igel is very, very good at quickly supporting the latest version of all that ecosystem technology needed to complete the overall solution. But probably the most compelling reason why people go with Igel and Igel OS is because it's software that runs on any x86 64 device. So whether it's a Dell PC, an HP thin client, a Lenovo laptop. If it's an x86 64-bit system, Igel OS can run on it. So we have a lot of customers who prolong the life of existing thin clients or avoiding the refresh of all those laptops, because all Igel OS really needs minimally is a gigahertz processor and 2 GB of RAM and storage. That's all you need on the device. So, you know, if you come to the 3 or 4 year point on having a bunch of laptops that your people are carrying around, you don't have to necessarily do that typical hardware refresh where everybody gets a new system. You need a new system because Windows has gotten even fatter and more demanding. Remember, if Windows is now running in the cloud or data center, this lightweight endpoint doesn't need all that horsepower, it doesn't need all that RAM, and it doesn't need all that storage. In fact, the device is pretty much running as a stateless system. Because of that, those laptops that your people are carrying around or those thin clients that you bought 3 or 4 years ago can probably continue to run another 3, 4, 5 years or longer, because again, the local operating system, Igel OS, it demands so little to deliver a great user experience. Because of that, right, customers save a lot of money in hardware. They save a lot of money in operations because it takes very few resources to manage all this stuff, as opposed to managing a bunch of Windows systems. And it even saves on power because you don't have to buy more powerful machines to run a more demanding operating system. One great anecdote, right, is we have one large healthcare company. Healthcare is kind of the largest type of organization that we sell to, where they have those computers on wheels, those carts that they move from one patient room to the other. Those things are all powered by a local battery pack at the bottom of the cart, which powers up a PC and some other auxiliary equipment, right, that they use to monitor the patients. We have one customer in the Midwest who switched to Igel OS and thin clients sitting on those devices, and they're able to expand the amount of time between battery charges on those computers on wheels by 6x. And that's great because that's 6 times extended period of time between recharges means they're actually offering better patient care, fewer interruptions. Just one example.
Hey, Dan, this is Mike. Before you move on to the next slide, Eric has a question about the Igel settings on the endpoints. And Eric, I apologize if I'm not getting this correct, but his question is, are Igel settings dominant to the Citrix on the endpoints? And when you talk about working with Citrix, the settings precedence over Citrix policy compared to Igel.
No, so the way this works is we work pretty much hand in glove. So if you're using, because with the Citrix Workspace app, you can set all kinds of great settings for permissions and policies and what people can do and even what people see on their desktop, etc. With the Igel OS, you can choose default or even just kind of allow, just go with the Citrix settings, right? So the default settings are rather light. Now there's a lot of bells and whistles that you can adjust with Igel OS, but the default settings are pretty basic stuff, and you can defer to what you've already chosen for Citrix and have that be quote unquote invisible on the Igel end. So that's a very important consideration, right? Set up a lot of those rules and laws and policies and what people literally see on their device with the Citrix Workspace app. You don't want to overrule it or have to do something twice. So no, we make that pretty easy.
Right. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, and then it's not just because I'm on this webinar. I mean, Citrix is a critical market driver for us, a critical partner. So that's be sure that we work really, really well with them. And anything you want to set with Citrix instead of on an Igel OS system, you can do that. I will say that we talked about security before, and Igel OS is secure by design. Number one, it's based on Linux. Linux is certainly not as top heavy as Windows. It's got a community of contributors to Linux. It doesn't have the history behind it of other operating systems in terms of being vulnerable. And we've done certain things to the distribution that we use. The first thing is that it's a read-only OS, so it can't be tampered with. It's never been hacked. Now, when it comes to security, nobody should ever brag. Nobody should. You don't want to lead with your chin when it comes to security. So, as a matter of fact, it has never been hacked. But I'll just leave it at that because no system is ever completely immune. But it's lightweight, has a very small attack surface, tiny little footprint. It's read-only, it's modular, and by that I mean you can set up Igel OS, so based on user type, some users may have less Igel OS than others to minimize the attack surface. Because if someone is a clerk and maybe not a design engineer, they may have a quote-unquote simpler cross-section of Igel OS running on their endpoint device than somebody else who might need to use a bunch of extra peripherals and kind of demanding app workloads. It's also trusted in that we have something we call a chain of trust. And this is a cryptographic signature sequence that starts at the UEFI, or layman's terms, the BIOS, if you want to think of it that way, that's sitting on the device itself. And it's a series of checks per each step of the boot up process, all the way up until you get to like your Citrix session, so that we ensure that if anything's been tampered with in that process, the system checks itself and it'll actually turn itself off and send an alarm if anything doesn't come out as cryptographically signed by a trusted signature authority. So that happens. That even happens on our hardware. We're a software company, but we do sell hardware. We actually have that burned into the AMD chip on those devices themselves. So it actually starts at the hardware level on the thin client devices that we offer. But otherwise, it's on the UEFI if you Dell or HP or Lenovo, etc. We have a product called the UD Pocket. That is essentially our Igel OS operating system on a stick. And you pop it into a USB port on any PC, including your home PC that might even be running some strange operating system. And you boot from USB and it brings up your work environment. It brings up your Citrix Workspace app. You get the icon, you click on it. So during that session, it is only your work environment. You cannot access your personal environment while it's running off the USB Pocket. And what's really cool is once your session ends, you exit the session, you unplug the UD Pocket, the system goes back to its original environment. So we have a lot of people who we send home who are using their home PCs with the UD Pocket, and they don't miss a beat. And then finally, when it comes to security, and by the way, that environment is completely separate from the home environment. You don't have to worry about anything bleeding between your personal stuff and your work stuff. It's fully sequestered. It's like it's sandboxed. I can't use the word container because technically it's not a container if you know what containers are, but it is completely separate from your home environment. And then finally, we work, and I mentioned this before, we've got 100 plus ecosystem partners, and a lot of them are kind of in that security quadrant, whether it's single sign-on or smart card readers or biometric, palm vein readers or whatever you want. We've got a lot of partners who we work with, and that's really important, especially in healthcare. So in the Citrix world, right, our forte and where we complement your Citrix environment is on those endpoints. Because if you're using Citrix, and the implication you've got your Windows desktops and your Windows apps, right? Whether it's an application virtualization or desktop virtualization, that's running in the cloud, either private data center or a public cloud, including the Citrix as a service. Igel OS now replaces Windows on those endpoints because it doesn't make sense to access Windows with Windows. One of the reasons people do this is to move the problem of managing and the challenge of managing Windows into the secure data center, where you can kind of get your arms around it in one place or maybe two if you've got redundant data centers, and then vastly simplify the process of controlling and managing the endpoint devices themselves with this very lightweight, highly secure operating system called Igel OS. And from that, fire up Igel OS, click on the Citrix Workspace app icon, and boom, you're right into your work experience. And that's this is showing it, right? We've got desktops and apps being delivered from the cloud to those endpoints on the bottom. And then it gets managed through something called the Universal Management Suite, which is that UMS thing on the right. And we have the ability to manage devices off the corporate network, people working from home, for example, through something called the IGEL Cloud Gateway. This sits on a server someplace between the internet and your private network, kind of in your DMZ, if you will. And all you need now is to have internet Wi-Fi connectivity from any location. And to the UMS, it makes it look like it's on the corporate LAN, which means you can distribute updates and patches and policies right from that console as if they were in the same building. You can even do remote shadowing. So, somebody can be working from their home in Montana, but if they've got a Wi-Fi connection as a UMS administrator, you can be in Boston or someplace, and you can literally take over their machine, the mouse and the keyboard, et cetera, if you want to do troubleshooting from UMS. So this really makes the whole work from home model work with full control and manageability from the company. I mentioned our partner ecosystem, and obviously, in this case, we're talking about Citrix, but this is a fairly impressive list. We have what we call the IGEL Ready program. And with these companies, we do validation and verification testing. We've got a test harness, a suite of tests to run with these guys. We have what's called the IGEL Ready website. If you go out to igel.com, you can get to the IGEL Ready part. These companies are listed out there. Some have achieved a greater level like Citrix has of IGEL Ready, and some are in the process. But if you look at this, we see unified communications. You see security. You see all the things that people are concerned about when it comes to this vastly distributed workforce. But all of these technologies are fully integrated with IGEL OS, which means no matter what your environment looks like, you probably can rest assured that the integration or the addition of IGEL into the mix can be done very, very quickly and easily. This comes in really handy during merger and acquisition, right? We've got in healthcare and in finance, which are our two biggest markets, merger and acquisition is a way of life. There were like 1,900 M&A activities during 2019 just in healthcare. And those endpoint devices typically are running different OSs. They're from different vendors. You've got all these different types of media and peripherals, et cetera. Since we play so well with all these companies, hardware and software, those M&A transactions can go as easy as you can imagine by placing Windows on those devices, just dropping IGEL OS on them.
Okay, Dan, quick question for you is, Eric again is asking, can I identify a unique UDP even if it's being used on a different endpoint? So being able to take those devices and move them between endpoints, and will you be able to identify them?
So the licenses, so this is licensed software, and there's a right to use license that is a perpetual license for the base functionality. And then there's a subscription for some extra functionality, including that IGEL Cloud Gateway capability. The licenses can be moved. So you can move a license from one device to the next, but it's not designed to allow you to use 7 different devices of choice and to kind of have that license bouncing around like crazy. The main use case for that is if you're going to replace your primary device, it's aged out, you want to replace it with one, keep running on the same license, you port it to the new device. My answer to that, I guess, is a partial yes. Yes, you can move your license to a different device, and IGEL OS can run on that device with the same license, but it's not really designed for kind of like, crazy back and forth. I want all 7 of my devices to use the same license. It does not support that. Yep.
Sure. And if Eric needs clarification on that, he can contact you after the webinar as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So from a user perspective, right, you power up the Igel OS, and if I've got a UD pocket, if I pop it into my home PC and boot off USB, this is what I see, right? If I'm running the Citrix Workspace app, I just click on that login logo, and up comes the Workspace app. So that's how easy. This is the initial screen you see. There's a browser, a secure browser that comes with the device. So if you also want to go straight into kind of a web-based application, or just kind of do some basic web browsing without going into your virtual session, that's fine. And all this is controlled by the company. The company may or may not want to give you that browser, right? It's all configurable based on use cases and policies. But if you're familiar with the Workspace app, all you do is click on that icon and you're off and running. Real simple. I talked about the UD Pocket device because it's become so popular in the last 8 months. And it's been somewhat of a lifesaver for a number of our customers. And that's what it looks like. And that is actually a normal sized human hand. We didn't hire like, Andre the Giant or anybody. So it's about the size of a thumbnail, which is why it's got that loop there for a keychain. You don't want to lose the thing. That's how small it is. And when you take it, you pop it into any PC running any type of, as long as it's x86 system, and you boot off USB, and up comes that Igel OS interface we just looked at. So, and again, it's Igel OS on there, so it's secure, it's read-only, it's modular, etc. And what's really nice is when you take it out of the system, start your PC up again or reboot it, it's back to its original environment. So since it's Igel OS, even though it's a thing that you touch and feel, we really view it as a software product. It's nothing more than the delivery mechanism for Igel OS, but it gives the people the ability, and this is that license we were talking about. It's licensed and it's managed by the UMS. Pop it into your home device or some other laptop, and up comes your work experience. So this gives you that massive mobility, which perhaps the question from earlier was kind of alluding to. Now this I can run on any device I want, right? So if I've got 3 devices at home and one's in the den and the other one's in the living room and I'm too lazy to go grab another one, I just pop it into one if I'm sitting in front of the TV set, for example. But other than that, it gives you the full capability of Igel OS, delivers the full capability of the Citrix Workspace app, which delivers the full capability of all of your work, desktop and applications. And so this is kind of like now VDI and DAS made super simple, right? Get to anything you want, any application you want, any cloud, any workspace, with Citrix and with Igel OS. And again, our focus is on these endpoint devices. And again, I did mention that we sell hardware. We're not really a hardware company, we're a software company, but we do have some customers who want the complete solution. The vast majority of our Igel OS sales are on existing endpoints that are being purposed with Igel OS, because you're relinquishing Windows and placing it in the data center or cloud. But a lot of people are expanding, right? They're adding seats. They like the idea of a small, low-energy, stateless device. So we offer really, really good endpoints to marry up with Igel OS. I briefly mentioned the management of this. It's software that you run on a server, and there's a variety of server platforms that it'll run on, right? Whether it's Windows Server or some of the popular other server platforms. But so it's pretty flexible. There's a good chance that whatever you're running out there, SQL or whatever else you might have in addition to Windows Server, it can run on there. And that you just have a console that connects to that software, and you can manage hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of these endpoint devices. And by manage, what I mean is there's the version of Igel OS that's on there, right? The user profiles, the policies, and again, you can simply just inherit what's ever running in the Workspace app if you've already done that work with Citrix. But it gives you the ability to configure, update, and secure these endpoint devices. And the patching process is so much simpler because it's such a small image. And Igel OS doesn't get updated that often because it's a very, it doesn't do much. And by that I'm trying to compliment it when I say that, right? it does what it does really, really well and nothing else. And then I show that internet connection. The ICG, IGEL Cloud Gateway, gives you full control to those home and remote devices. So with IGEL Os and UD Pocket, right, you can turn any device into an IGEL Os powered endpoint if you're at home, and it'll then support GoToMeeting with great high fidelity, or Teams or WebEx or whatever you're using. Business continuity. This is a great tool for business continuity, right? When the pandemic hit, a lot of our customers, we just shipped them out a bunch of UD Pockets because some people actually had trouble getting back into their offices and they had home PCs. So they just used UD Pockets, they popped those in and they didn't miss a beat. Their workspace showed up and they were able to get everything done because all they needed was a gigahertz process, a couple gigabytes of RAM. So it gives you very secure work from home because all of the security aspects of IGEL Os are on the UD Pocket. And again, it's completely sequestered separately from the home environment. UMS reaches out to all those devices through the IGEL Cloud Gateway, so you don't miss anything from an IT perspective. You still retain full management control over what your people are able to do once they've gone into their work environment with the Workspace app. And again, we've got all these customized ways of managing what people can do with those endpoint devices. Either complementary to or instead of or not at all based on what you've already set up Citrix. And hopefully you guys can hear me real well and the graphics here are good and we're having a rich productive experience right now. This is the software.
So Dan, before you get into the video, another question. I apologize if I get this name wrong. Dario is asking, do you support multi-display on up to the 4 endpoints?
Absolutely. Yeah, anything you can do, and Citrix does as well, right? So we've got, we can support quad display, dual display, quad display. The software does whatever you can do on a PC. The software does as well for endpoint protocols. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So at this point, we'd like to kick off a little video. That, like 3 minutes.
And I have 2. So which one?
They're both good. There's a UD Pocket video, but you might not be able to tell from the link. But the other one is actually a really good video too. So and they're both short. If we have time, we could show both. So
Okay.
you got a 50-50 shot of it being the primary one. And I apologize for that, Stephanie. I should have told you which one is which.
Let's try this one.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Barmundi. I am an IGEL Business Development Manager located in Seattle, Washington. As we all know, this current outbreak has caused massive issues and disruptions in our daily lives. I'm here in my house in Seattle, weathering it. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter, 2 dogs. You might see one jumping around here in the background as I record this. But it's been a surreal experience for everyone. IGEL has some unique solutions that can help ease the distraction, the burden you have from working at home that I think could be helpful that I want to demo to you today. So really quickly, I'm going to be using one of these. This is an IGEL UDP or UD Pocket, which essentially is the IGEL operating system on a USB stick. You can take this, plug it into any x86 device, which could be Intel or AMD based, boot off it in a dual boot scenario, right? Keep the current operating system of the device you're booting from installed and boot purely from this into a read-only secure IGEL operating system. So let's do it. I'm going to switch over to my wife's laptop and we can go from here. Here is her laptop. It is a Dell Latitude, an older one. I'm going to simply plug in UD Pocket and I'm going to restart the laptop and boot from it. Now, the hardest piece of this is going to be ensuring that your users from home know how to boot their device from USB. We have some KB articles on the IGEL website that can help with this. It could be a hotkey. It could be that you have a methodology to set it in the BIOS. However that is, we have some documentation on it to help you through that. Once it is booted, obviously you can see there's a legacy boot option and UEFI boot as well as secure boot. We support all these, including secure boot based on your environment to make things work. I'm going to simply pick the USB storage device and boot into that very quickly. So what the IGEL operating system is it's an operating system that uses all the current protocols and workspace constructs like Citrix, VMware, Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, and even Amazon Workspaces to make things work. What you're going to see is a demo on how to enable some of these to connect back to the environments that you have set up for these. Now, IGEL doesn't create these environments. We're simply a vehicle to get to these environments, and that can include apps, it could include data, it could include things like Microsoft Teams as an application, as you can see working here as it boots. Part of this system is obviously figuring out how to manage all these devices. So the IGEL OS has a companion product that is included with it called the IGEL UMS, or Universal Management Server. I'm going to switch over to that really quick and share my screen and show you what that looks like. So as you can see on my screen, this is the IGEL Management Server that can be used to manage tens or even thousands of devices. Part of this solution, beyond actually creating profiles or different feature sets for what you want to connect to and applying those to your devices, is actually shadowing and remote controlling those devices in a secure manner. Simply right-clicking the device that I have here and clicking on Shadow brings up a dialog and shows it's secured. I can even put in a password if I needed to, and I can quickly connect to it. This is the laptop that I showed you boot from, and here are all my different pieces that I can connect to right here. Now, obviously, most of you will use probably just one of these, like you only have Citrix or you only have VMware, but I'm going to show you and demo a couple of these. So number one, when I double-click on Citrix, based on the configuration from the IGEL UMS, I can instantly log on. I can give users the option to put in their own credentials, however you'd like to do that. On the IGEL desktop, it will publish these applications as well once it logs in. The other piece that IGEL has is the ability to sideload applications. What we mean by that is we can install applications like Microsoft Teams directly on the desktop, which gives you the ability to run this collaboration tool. It could be Teams, it could be something like Slack, but it gives you the ability, as long as there's a Linux build for that piece of software, to actually run, install, and use this very quickly and easily. As you can see here, I'm logging into Teams. Might take me a second. And once I'm logged on, I can get full access to all the Teams pieces with the native app working on the IGEL desktop, not necessarily in a Citrix or a VMware session. So as that's loading, you can see here in Citrix, I can actually launch applications. There comes my Teams coming up, so I can minimize that. And once the storefront loads the Excel 2016, again, this is working in my demo environment. Your environment may be much more fast. But you can see here, it will bring up Excel in just a second, and I can work using published applications in Citrix, just like that. The last piece I wanted to show you is the ability to connect to the new Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop environment. Obviously, this is a great public cloud-based resource that allows you to use Windows in the cloud to connect to. Here, I'm logging in with my credentials. IGEL is right now the only Linux-based operating system that supports a Windows Virtual Desktop client, and that has one that you can connect with. So here, I'm just simply clicking on the desktop that's presented to me, and now I have access to my Windows Virtual Desktop in the Azure cloud. It's even back to where I was demoing before. So I'm right on the BBC's website. You can see this is a full-blown Windows 10 desktop. Very cool stuff. When I'm done here, I can simply disconnect my session. And then at this point, I can log off of Citrix. So like any users, when they're done using their workspace, at this point, I'll stop sharing and I'll show you the laptop about what I mean. I can simply come over to the laptop. I can pull out the UD Pocket, and I can reboot my device.
All right, I believe that's the end of the video.
Yeah.
Dan, a couple of questions for you from that. Let's see, does IGEL support USB webcam traffic for MS Teams meetings?
I don't know.
Okay. No, that's a good answer. He doesn't know, but he
I
might
never
find.
guess. I never guess. I think probably, I think the answer is probably yes, but I'm not going to say that. I would have to, whoever's asking the question, email at o'farrell@igel.com, and I can check with one of the product managers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. One other thing is, can IGEL support a hardware-based USB token like a YubiKey or pass-through for MFA?
Don't know.
Don't know that answer.
That's
Okay.
for somebody else in the company. Yep.
And I bet this is another technical one from Randy. Does IGEL support Cisco JVDI agent that can be installed on the device?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. No, that's relatively new. The JVDI agent supported natively on the device. That was in the last release, I believe, 1104. Yep.
Okay. And Adam Benton is asking, can the Igel OS be installed as a virtual machine like with Parallels so that rebooting isn't necessary?
I don't know that one either. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we support Parallels. That's one of the environments we support, but I don't know if we can answer that question. So again, whoever has those questions, o'farrell@igel.com, I can chase it down for you.
okay. That's it. Go ahead.
Great. Good. So hopefully from that video, which was a real classic hands-on. I mean, Mike Barmondi is one of our SE types in the company. He showed you just pop the UD Pocket in. You've got Igel OS. You've got your environment. You go into your Citrix environment. He was also showing you the management software that runs on a server someplace and how you can literally shadow an endpoint, which happened to be in his house as well. But yeah, so pretty simple. Why don't we move on? Finish up here because we're just about running out of time. The UD Pocket and everything else, is on Citrix Ready. It's in the Citrix marketplace. These are all Citrix Ready technologies that we have because Citrix is such an important partner of ours, obviously. But yeah, that's out there, and you go out to the Citrix Ready marketplace and see Pocket out there. Let's see. Go forward. Yeah, in fact, that's the page. That's what it looks like on the Citrix website. For more info, you can go to igel.com, security at the edge. It talks all about how we help to protect all those endpoints across an enterprise with Igel OS. And then if you just click on resources, that's the resource library where we've got assets that talk about how we work so closely with Citrix, app notes, infographics, tip sheets, etc. It's all out there. So this is a good use, I think, hopefully for all of you, of 55 minutes. I don't know if we have any more time left or if there are any questions left. We might have another minute or two that I can answer, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions in the block. Nope.
Great.
Wow,
Good.
and I did put your email address in the chat for everyone if you guys want to reach out to Dan directly.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. No problem.
Okay, well then let's see. We just have a little wrap-up slide. I'm putting the link to your survey in the chat right now. And just a reminder that if some of you may have opted in for a chance to win a 4K TV, big prize. As soon as this webinar is over, I am going to pull the registration report and I will use the Google randomizer to choose the winner, and I will announce the winner on Twitter. So please make sure you follow us on Twitter so you can see who won. And also just follow us on Twitter so you know what's going on. It's the best place to keep up to date with everything that's going on at mycugc.org. And with that, I will give you all back to your day. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us again today. And thank you, Mike, for keeping an eye on all those questions.
Yep. And thanks everybody for attending. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
All right, everyone. I hope you all have a very healthy and happy holiday season and a happy new year. It's got to be better, right? So we'll see you all in 2021. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.